Welcome, Mary Ellen. Welcome to our show, our YouTube channel, uh, Voices on the Path to Soul Freedom. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you. My name is Mary Ellen Mons. I live in Emigrant, Montana, just a few miles away from our ranch. And I first found the teachings in 1970 and got to know Mark and Mother and joined staff in 1972 and served on staff. I was the head of the Montessori International School for many years, primarily the lower school. So I was in charge of the babies up through sixth grade. And it was a great joy over many years. I have three grown children, all who went through Montessori and grew up in our community. Um, I also served as a teacher at Summit University Level 2 and um, was on Mother's research staff for many years and worked directly with her almost every day for many long cycles. And um, there came a time when it was time when Summit University and Montessori International closed, when Mother was getting ready to retire, then I decided I had to either follow my Dharma and do more Montessori or, you know, try to apply for something else at the ranch. But I decided I had to follow my Dharma. And it has been such an enriching Dharma. Some of you may have heard of Dr. Elizabeth Caspari, and she came and joined our community in 1979 because I answered a letter that she wrote to the church. She said she had worked with Maria Montessori, and I was a little skeptical at first until I started talking to her and realizing, wow, she's the real deal. And anyway, she came and worked at our community for many years, and she had worked with Montessori in India for actually 4 years. And then when she came to the United States, she started training Montessori teachers, and she came to our community and took me under her wing to become a master teacher. And so, just briefly, my Montessori lecturing and teaching and offering training has taken me to six continents. It's taken me all over the world. And I am so grateful for the opportunity to spread the message, because what's really amazing is when you really read Montessori books, you find out that she's saying exactly the same thing that Mother Mary says in some of her dictations. And Mother told me that Maria Montessori had ascended and is working in the retreat with Mother Mary because she is her Chila. So everything is always about the ascended masters, even when you're out doing something that you wouldn't necessarily think was exactly it. It is.
And that's
So,
wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Do you want to just briefly, not everyone might know what Montessori school is about.
okay. Um, when Mother, as you know, has five children, and when the first four were born, she well, actually, when the first three were born, the fourth one hadn't come yet, she decided she needed a school for the children in her community. And so she and Mark founded a school called Montessori International. Maria Montessori she was an Italian woman. She was actually the first woman physician in Italy, believe it or not. And she was very successful in her um, work, although she had been very opposed because back in the day, she was born in the 1870s, and women just didn't do things like she was doing, but she did them anyway. And so, anyway, she started a school, and she was really inspired by observing the children and listening to what we know it was the Mother Mary speaking to her. And Mother actually said the God and Goddess Meru, Mother Mary and Jesus were teaching her. And she was given the inspiration of the system of caring for young children that Mother Mary had used with Jesus and her cousin Elizabeth had used with John the Baptist. So that was really the first Montessori school. And from Maria Montessori then developed a way to enrich an environment. She called it the prepared environment, where there are lots of absolutely fascinating, constructive things to do for children 2.5 through 6. And then she later developed the 6 through 12, 12 through 18, and all the way through, and the infants and toddlers as well. But it started with the 3 to 6 year olds. And um, If you've never been in a Montessori school, I really recommend that you go and visit one. I will be releasing a new book called Free to Be at the July class, where I did go into depth as to what the Montessori method really is all about. But it's really creating an environment where children are shown all these rich things to do in what we call practical life, everything from dusting, sweeping, pouring, scrubbing a table, things that children see their parents do and they like to do. And so we have little lessons made up of just what they need for those activities, and they can do them whenever they want. And then sensorial, where they sort colors and they sort the touch of things, different grades of sandpaper, and all kinds of interesting activities. And then language, where they learn about this, they learn just to be able to converse in a group, which is very hard for some little 2.5 and 3 year olds. So it's very, oral language is an important part. Vocabulary building with beautiful sets of activities, like a set of fruits in a basket, all the tropical fruits and the temporal fruits. And then Madame Caspari always said, now let's get real specific. So when we get to vegetables, we have vegetables that grow under the ground, vegetables that grow on the ground, and vegetables that grow up into the air. And so children not only are learning the new words, but they're learning categories in their thinking, which is helping to create the greatest order and logical sequences in their minds. And then, of course, there's a lot of math with all hands-on materials. So the beautiful thing about Montessori is that children are shown these materials, how to do them, the specific lessons. And then when they come in, they're free to choose anything they want. And they can stay with it for 40 minutes if they want. I've seen children stay tracing letters and writing them for at least a full hour. And, people have this prejudice that young children, oh, they're flighty, they can't concentrate, blah, 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 all kinds of things. That's not true when they're put in the prepared environment. Now, obviously, not all children adjust quite as quickly as others, but I've been doing this for 50 years, and I know how well it works. And Maria Montessori was also nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for three different years in a row. And I have thought about this so much. And it's not because of the schools, it's because she understood that the future of mankind is based on the quality of the human beings that we can raise. And she made a really interesting statement. In the year 1947, which happens to be the year that I was born, she wrote a letter to all the leaders of every nation on earth. And in this letter, she said that children are at the level of the food gatherers. I thought, well, what then? She explained that they can only build their consciousness out of what is in the environment. They have to be fed the nutrition of the mind, the nutrition of the heart. And of course, Mother called it the education of the heart. And so these are aspects of Montessori that they're a little abstracted unless you've actually seen the children at work. But the aim is not that they learn to read and write early, although they do. The aim is that they learn to concentrate and focus and connect to what Montessori called the inner teacher, which Elizabeth Clare Prophet called the Holy Christ self. So that's what Montessori is really about.
Um, I just for clarification for people who might not know who mother is, do you want to just however briefly, if you want to describe that? Sure.
Sure. Um, The Summit Lighthouse is the organization that I've been involved with for now almost 55 years. And they were started with a couple, Mark and Elizabeth Prophet, as the messengers of the Ascended Masters. They have been highly trained in this in previous lifetimes so that they can become very still and receive the messages of the Ascended Masters, of Jesus, of Mary, of Confucius, of Lord Lanto, of the many, many different Ascended Masters from all the world's religions. And it is based on finding the true self of each one. And the masters explain that we have our physical body, our mental body, our emotions, and a memory body. But then if you follow up the cord what many mystical traditions call the silver cord or the crystal cord. You rise up the cord and you reach the Holy Christ self, which is the intermediary that God gave to us. And then above that is your true self, your mighty I am presence. And if you remember, if you know the Bible, and when Moses met the burning bush, he asked, who shall I say sent me? What is the name of God? And the bush said, I am that I am. And that is the core teaching of the messengers, Elizabeth Clare Prophet and Mark L. Prophet. Now, Mark made his ascension back in 1973, and Elizabeth has been in charge of the organization, raising her 5 children and doing her work of being a messenger writer. She's written many, many books. And I think that the point that you were asking about, Pamela, was that people, her students started to call her mother because she had been given the mantle of the mother of the flame. And so people just call her mother. And so if I'm referring to her that way, it's a kind of a kind appellation that her students have given to her.
Thank you.
You
Is there uh, anything that you think that would be most helpful to people for their children or for themselves related to all you've learned?
Wow. You know, that's a really good question. And I've had some very, very difficult cycles of my life, and I've had very joyous cycles of my life. And I've had situations where it appeared that I was not being treated justly. And not when I was on staff, it was when I'd created another organization for Montessori training. And what I kind of have had to learn, I think the most important thing is that um, there's such thing as karma. We put into action certain things, maybe this life or maybe another life, and it comes back to us. So sometimes things happen to us because it's our karma. And the lesson that I learned, I think the thing I would want to share is to try to keep your equanimity and just realize that this too shall pass. And there's a reason for it. Maybe it's a test of your soul, maybe it's karma, maybe it's being injustice, and you have to learn to deal with that without becoming angry and hanging on to it. So I think that, keeping your cool and forgiving. And for me, the greatest gift that I think I have been able to garner out of all this is such intense gratitude. And when you feel gratitude for even the difficult things that happen, because they're taking you closer to God, they're taking you through the test of your lifetime. And so I think gratitude is probably, letting it go and being grateful that for whatever it's here, and let's just deal with it and move on.
Wow. That's very helpful. Thank you.
You're
Is
welcome.
there anything else that you would like to share?
When you first invited me, you were talking about the ascension, the people stories about the ascension, and I think that that's a good topic because ultimately I had grew up a Catholic, but it wasn't working for me, and so then I started studying the work of Vivekananda and Ramakrishna, became involved in Vedanta, which is out of India, but it's actually very close to our teaching in many ways. And when I found our teachings, I realized as everything that Saint Germain and the different masters taught us, it's all about preparing for your ascension, that our goal in life is to reunite with God. And the tests that come to us are to enable us to clear, like, well, just think about it this way. Every erg of energy that you have ever been given has to be used, right? Because it comes to us, we use it, we say things, we act, we keep things hidden inside, whatever it might be. But every bit of that energy has to get balanced. So the good that you do rises up, but the bad that you do, the ill thinking, whatever it might be, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you're a mean person or you deliberately are doing things, but we all make mistakes. And so all of that energy also comes back to us in a way that we can send it out as love and when everything is balanced and we've fulfilled our mission, we can make our ascension into the light. And the ascension in the light is why we have ascended masters, because Jesus demonstrated to us, Mother Mary demonstrated to us, and what in the Catholic Church is called the Assumption. There are many masters all through the world who have taken their leave. Gautama Buddha, Lord Lanto. These are precious masters, Confucius. And they have all shown us the way, the truth, the life, really. And it's as we have, there are several books that Mrs. Prophet has written about the ascension, and they describe in detail what it is like to be taken to the retreat at Luxor, which is, there are retreats of the ascended masters all through the world that we don't see them because they're in the etheric plane. They are vibrating at a higher level than what we can see and hear. But at night, we go to those retreats when we're out of our bodies. And these retreats prepare us for the assisting other people on earth and for preparing ourselves for the ascension. And there's one particular retreat at Luxor, Egypt, and that retreat is where individuals are prepared to take their ascension, and many of them take their ascension from there. And maybe at the inner planes, they didn't make it quite in this life. So after they died, because they had known people, they've served people, they can still be balancing enough karma on the other side to prepare themselves. Because basically what the masters have said, that we have to only balance 51% of our karma. So I was saying about how all the energy comes out and all of it gets used or misused. Well, we only have to balance 51% of it. Obviously, we want to balance more and go back to heaven 100% balance. But sometimes the masters know that they need us more on that side than on this side. And that the great mysteries that, I can't go into because maybe I've had some dreams where I think I was over there, but I can't tell you what it's really like on the other side. There are people who have written about it, but not me.
Thank you. Um,
You're welcome.
anything else or?
Well, I don't know who my audience is, and I don't know whether you are working towards the ascension or this is a new concept to you. But because of my life plan, and believe me, when I was in college, I was a political science major. I had no interest in teaching children, none. But when I first got into the teachings, I had a meeting with Mrs. Prophet, mother, and she said, well, tell me about yourself, and I'd been a waitress, I'd been a motel maid, I'd done all this kind of stuff, and I dropped out of college. And, because I didn't want to spend my mother's money on unless I knew what I wanted to do. And I knew after the first year and a half that political science was not it. I wanted to serve, but I didn't know how. And so I think that I think I lost my train of thought here.
It's okay. Well, you were saying that you were being asked about your background and
Oh,
what you want to
yes.
do because you didn't want to work with children.
Yeah, because I had not thought about it. And so after I explained all this, my life to mother, she said, well, why don't you think about Montessori? And I just looked up to her and I said, what is that? And she said, well, go find out. So I was living on an island in British Columbia at the time, a beautiful little island, Salt Spring Island, off between Vancouver and Vancouver Island. And I had applied for Canadian citizenship. I did not like the Vietnam War, and so I was just leaving with some friends. And so I went into a bookstore in Victoria and I found this book, The Absorbent Mind, which is one of Montessori's classic books. And at the first pages, she talks about um, the inner teacher guiding the child rather than the adult teaching the child. And when I read that, I thought, okay, there's a whole different way of looking at this. So, then I went back and I spoke to Mrs. Prophet again, and I said, I like this. I'm going to take my training, and when can I join staff? And so then she invited me to join staff as soon as my training was over. And I kind of the community has disciplines to it to keep everybody focused and doing what they need to be doing. And I was envisioning that after I finished my training, I was going to take like a 2-week vacation and just go to the beach every day because I grew up in Santa Barbara and I just wanted to go there. And I got a phone call, and it was Mother and Mark's secretary. Her name is Florence. And she said, I have a message to you from El Moria, and he wants you to come immediately. So I packed up my belongings. I had a nice Volvo, and I packed up all my belongings, kissed my mother and brother goodbye. My father had passed several years before, and I drove to Colorado Springs. That's where our community was at that time. And I got settled and started preparing a summer school for children, and then taught at the school. Then I took the elementary training, and I just continued teaching and administrating the school for the next almost 40 years. So it was but I also then would get pulled and worked on Mother's research staff and worked at Summit University. And it was a very interesting process. And I had this one really funny story. I was sitting with Mother, and um, she asked me if I would be the TA, teaching assistant at Summit University level 2. And I said, well, but Mother, I haven't even been to level 1. She just took my hand and she said, well, dear, I haven't either. Although she wrote the whole content for it. But it was just, that was her humility. It was the sweetness of her humility. And she just became a good friend and a mentor, and obviously my teacher. But it kind of transcended that, because I had casual time with her on occasion too. And anyway, it's been quite a wonderful journey. And, she made her transition, her ascension. It's 2009, I think. And so the organization is kind of still going strong, but sometimes stumbling a little bit without having a living messenger. But we've got this amazing amount of wonderful teachings. And then we have these conferences 4 times a year at the turn of each season. We're getting ready for the July conference, and that's usually the biggest one because it's great weather here in Montana, and people come up and camp and come to all the conference, and it's going to be a wonderful experience. So whoever you are out here, I hope I meet you. And Pamela, I don't know if I've ever met you.
I think so. It was 31 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, but used to work in the kitchen. Um,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
There you go.
Is there anything else that how would you recommend that people, if they're interested in finding these teachings, of where do they start?
I think probably the best way to start is to go online and find the website for the Summit Lighthouse and work from there. Yeah, there's numbers you can call to talk to somebody. You can sign up to receive the Pearls of Wisdom, which are the beautiful little messages from different ascended masters that really, since golly, the late 50s when Mark Prophet started receiving them, they've never missed a week. And so sometimes they bring them in bundles now, 2 or 3 weeks at a time, but we get them online or in the mail. So I'd sign up for the Pearls of Wisdom, and I would just go to that website, and if you were interested, talk to somebody. There's a lot of people who are more than happy there to chat with you and answer questions and help you find the next step for you personally.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any last words or
I would have to say that finding these teachings was the best thing that happened in my life, and it happens every day. And you know, from 1970 to now, 2025, it's been a long time, and it continues to enrich one every day because we practice the power of decrees, the spoken word. I'll be invoking and trying to visualize the violet flame, which is the highest level of frequency of all the flames, and it will transmute. When you're feeling upset about something or not feeling really great, you can do violet flame and just goes away like that. So I'm going to give you a demonstration. We teach this to the young children. I am a being of violet fire. I am the purity God desires. I am a being of violet fire. I am the purity God desires. I am a being of violet fire. I am the purity God desires. So you can do it 3 times, 9 times, 108 times. It really, and we do rosaries to Mother Mary. We do our prayers to Kuan Yin for mercy, and we all need mercy. And and healing prayers. We have services on Friday night for the Ascension for people who have passed away that we want to help them get taken to the retreats where they can be prepared to either go to another retreat to prepare for the Ascension or to prepare to come back for the next lifetime where they encounter more karma and get ready for their Ascension. And then Saturday night, we have a service to Saint Germain where we just pray for the freedom of all mankind and for our country, whatever our country may be. And Sunday morning, we have a wonderful service with a dictation that's played and Holy Communion, and it's just a beautiful service. And then there's a service on Wednesday night for healing with Jesus. And it's just, there's activities all during the week. And there's actually study groups where you could take a certain book of the teachings and work with some other people to learn more about not only what you think of it and your reaction, but what is the reaction of several other people. And then somebody who may be experienced in the teachings might make a few suggestions here or there. But there are just many choices of how you can interact. And there are study groups and teaching centers all around the United States and the world. And so you can come in just a little bit, or you can come in and find this is your life. And so nobody's requiring anything of you. They just want to help you find what works for you for your spiritual path. Because ultimately, each one of us has our own unique spiritual path. And I think that's been the joy of working with young children and elementary age children to see how they start to blossom. And and I'm the mother of 3 children, and when you hold them in your arms, you don't know who they are yet. Maybe you've had some dreams or whatever, but you have to watch them unfold. And my 3 children are very different from each other, and their interests are different. That they all had the same mother and father. They grew up in the community the same, but they have all gone in different directions. One of them is an artist, the other one's a chef, and the other one's a writer. They're all creative. And I think, yeah, I'm just going to tell you one more story, if I may.
Yeah.
Um, a couple of years ago, probably 10 years ago, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, and the article's title was The Montessori Mafia. And, it caught people's attention. What are we talking about? And it started analyzing the people who, from Jeff Bezos to the guy that created Wikipedia, Will something, and oh, the other person. And anyway, some of the greatest creative minds in our world, whether we like them or not, they learn to think. Oh, the boys, Sergey Brin and the other one that created Google, they all went to Montessori schools when they were children, and they all said in interviews that it helped them think outside the box. And so that was the Montessori Mafia, these group of people who grew up in Montessori and who have changed the way we work because they can think outside the box. And it's a very interesting thing. And of course, Prince William went to Montessori school when he was a little boy, and I don't know if Harry did too. He probably did too. And their oldest child did. I'm not sure about the other ones, but Montessori is all over the world. And because my travels have taken me, I've trained in Hanoi, Vietnam. I've trained in South Africa. I've trained in South America and Ecuador and Colombia. There are a lot of beautiful Montessori schools. I've trained in South Korea. It's just, you wouldn't necessarily expect that these beautiful schools devoted to the freedom of the child to find who he is. And that's the ultimate message of Maria Montessori. And it's so in alignment with our teachings that many educational programs are not in alignment with the heart. But Montessori, if it's well done, is. And so I'm here talking about the teachings and about Montessori because that's been my life in service to the Brotherhood. Because the sponsors of Mother and Mark and of the Summit Lighthouse are the Great White Brotherhood. That doesn't mean race white, but it means the white light of the ascension around them. And they have many activities that they sponsor around the world. And the school that I think that moved me most deeply was in South Africa. There's a woman there who in no, I think it was 1980. She and a dear friend of hers decided that they had to start taking care of babies who had been orphaned by AIDS. Their mothers had died of AIDS and their fathers were in the picture. So they started with 8 children. Right now, they have 240 children at their orphanage outside of Johannesburg, South Africa. And the woman is a keeper of the flame. She loves the masters. Those children have Montessori schools for preschool all the way up through elementary and high school. And they decree every day. To walk into the auditorium when these children are doing their decrees and they're, blazing. And it's just like, I've never seen anything like it in the world. Back when we had our school in our community before mother made her transition and whatnot, we did have a very strong school of many children, but not like this. And 240 children that decree every day. And they are so dear and they're all orphans. Well, actually, the school has been so successful that they're starting to bring in a few community children who can actually pay. But for the most part, they're state funded because they are an orphanage, but they are devoted to the ascended masters. And when I was there, I opened a Sunday school for them, and I trained all their teachers, and it was like nothing I'd ever seen. And so there's hope for the world when groups of people care for their children and care for their own souls. Because there are many people who are lost. They don't know what to do. They don't know what they're supposed like people say, what am I going to do when I grow up? Well, they're already fully grown adults, but they still haven't figured out their own path. And so this is no small thing to try to figure it out. And you can only do it, I think, in prayer and just realization that God has a mission for you to prepare you to serve mankind in whatever way you can, whether it's raising your children, having a business, teaching teachers, whatever it is that you choose to do, being a nurse or a doctor. It can be humble, it can be very elaborate, it can be a politician, whatever, but it is to serve mankind and to prepare you to move forward in your spiritual path. And so, I think we were talking earlier about what I would share and listening grace, to always be listening and being grateful for the impressions that you get of what you can do and what you should be doing, because we know when we're doing something we shouldn't be doing. There's no question. We might choose to go ahead and do it, but it's not that we don't know. And but a lot of times people are so busy with their lives, they don't take the time to really listen. And I think that's really an important part of this whole scheme. So,
Thank you very, very much. It was very educational, and uh, yeah, and thank you. God bless you. Hope this was a good one.
okay, well, thank you, Pamela. Hello to all of you out there. If you're going to come to the July conference, I will be there. So I maybe meet some of you. Bye-bye.
Take care.